Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy, Thursday, October 7th. Ian Cameron with you today. No special guest today. It's just me flying solo. It's going to be a shorter show, an abbreviated edition of the show today, but we're still going to get through the entire pro football betting card for the upcoming week. We're going to talk all four CFL games, one on Friday, one on Saturday, and then two on Monday, Canadian Thanksgiving Monday, that is. A Thanksgiving CFL doubleheader, which is usually the case. CFL usually has one or two games every season on Canadian Thanksgiving in October, and this Monday is no exception. And I will be there for one of those games as well. The Toronto Argonauts taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and very much looking forward to that game. It's actually the first time that the Ticats have hosted a game on Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving, since I can remember. So it'd be cool to be there for that game. Let's get to it. Starting in the CFL, and then, of course, we'll turn our attention to the National Football League and break down the Week 5 NFL cards. So let's start with Edmonton and Winnipeg. Right now, again, widely available. We do not have lines currently posted for this game. Just be aware of that. There's a few books that have some numbers when it comes to these games. I mean, a couple books have Winnipeg right now minus 9.5 in this game, total 48.5. So we'll roll with that in terms of the point spread and the total here with this game. From a spot perspective, this is definitely a solid spot and situation here for the Edmonton Elks. When you think of the fact that they were completely and utterly embarrassed with their performance in their last game against the Ottawa Red Blacks, which was, to be honest with you, shockingly bad, shockingly inept, considering, too, that this team had a bye week prior to facing Ottawa, who had been the worst team in the CFL prior up till that point. Extra time to prepare for Edmonton. They were coming off back-to-back losses as well to the Blue Bombers, and then the second of the two games they played against Calgary around Labor Day, they lost. So you would think they're going to come back strong against an Ottawa team, not take them lightly, not take them for granted. They were horrendous. They lost 34-24. The defense, facing a quarterback making his first ever start in the CFL, and Caleb Evans, just simply had no answers for him. And we just saw Caleb Evans last night against the Argos, look like a completely different quarterback. 2 pick sixes that got returned for touchdowns, just flustered in the pocket, not reading the defense well, constant pressure. Toronto had defenders right around his feet pretty much the entire game. And we saw nothing like that defensively from the Edmonton Elks when they went up against Caleb Evans last week against the Ottawa Red Blacks. So it was a terrible performance. And I don't really know if, even with the spot being good for them, with them almost as double-digit underdog in this game, I don't really know if I can trust them still in this matchup against the best team in the CFL, the defending Grey Cup champions, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who are on a roll. 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread their last 5 games. They've played outstanding football. They've still only lost the one game all year. That was in Toronto. What can you say about this team? I mean, defensively, they're outstanding. With the defensive line led by Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson, who continue to play at an amazing level. The secondary has actually improved, I think, as the season's gone on. They're starting to make plays. That secondary, a lot of new starters and new faces back there to begin the year. And you got to credit Richie Hall, the defensive coordinator for Winnipeg, to really get that defense, and that pass defense in particular, improved. So to me, Winnipeg's just a tough team to go against right now. And you look at these last 4 victories, 23-8, 33-9 over Saskatchewan, back-to-back wins over the Riders, 37-22 against this same Edmonton team in Edmonton a few weeks ago, and then 30-9 at BC. So they're not only winning games, they've won each of their last 4 games by double-digit margins, and that's pretty much all they need to do here to cover the number, laying 9.5 in this game. And I'll say right now, if Taylor Cornelius is once again the quarterback this week for the Edmonton Elks, I don't think I'm backing them. He has not been good at all. And Dakota Prukop is their other option at quarterback. But, right now, I've got concerns for this Edmonton team. Let me see if I can get an update here on Trevor Harris for Edmonton. Oh, this is just in. It looks like as of this morning, it looks like expected to return for the Edmonton Elks. Well, that makes a massive difference for the Elks. There's no question about that. Because remember, when Winnipeg faced Edmonton a couple weeks ago, that was Taylor Cornelius. He has not played a single good game at quarterback since Harris got injured. Having Trevor Harris back helps. And when you look at the Bombers, there's going to have a couple of injuries here. It looks like Kevin Brown is out. I think there's talk that uh, uh, Kenny Lawler, who's been an outstanding receiver for them, that he might miss this game. It looks like he is going to miss this game because I remember seeing the Winnipeg Blue Bomber depth chart earlier today that was posted for this Friday night game tomorrow, and it had Kenny Lawler, the wide receiver, listed as out, and that's a shame because he's had incredible chemistry lately with Zach Collaros in the passing game. So being without him is going to hurt. I'm more inclined to look at Edmonton plus the points now than I certainly was before, knowing that Trevor Harris is going to return from that neck injury that's kept him out. I would lean that way a little bit. You look at the two meetings in between these two teams a couple of years ago. Remember, in Winnipeg, Edmonton only lost by a touchdown to the Bombers, and then they beat Edmonton 34-28 in the other meeting. Covered both of those meetings. Yeah, they got whipped by Edmonton a couple weeks ago, but it goes without saying that Trevor Harris, is going to be so much better for this team at quarterback than obviously Cornelius was. And for the Edmonton Elks, you also have to consider the fact that this is like desperation time for them. This is at the point in their season where they need to start putting some wins on the board. They're now last in the West Division. Calgary's passed them after beating Saskatchewan last week. So these are critical games for Edmonton. And Jamie Elizondo was not happy with his team's performance. He shouldn't have been. That was embarrassing. It's a bad look on him considering they had a bye week, and that's the best you can put on the table, that performance, that crap-ass performance. So there's a atonement that has to be made here for Edmonton in this game. Certainly it's not a great spot for Winnipeg simply because, they've already beaten Edmonton once. Edmonton's the last-place team. Winnipeg's the first-place team. They've got, another big game with BC coming up next week. Do they maybe look a little bit lackluster, a little bit, flat in this game? There is a possibility of that, but we just haven't seen Winnipeg really play down to their competition much this year. Best defense going. So not a tricky game, not a strong opinion, but given the spot and Trevor Harris coming back, and you're getting an inflated number. Let's not forget, you're now getting an inflated number in this game. Winnipeg just a few weeks ago in Edmonton was 5-point favorites that opened in that game. Now they're 9.5. So I lean Edmonton here. I think they've had a little bit of extra time to prepare as well because they played last week during the week against Ottawa. So a little extra time, but again, that didn't matter against Ottawa when they came off that bye week and looked so bad. But I've seen enough of football over the years where just have that sense maybe where Winnipeg may not have their best. This could be it. And Edmonton certainly should get a spark with Harris back. And you're getting now inflated number of points because of how dominant Winnipeg's looked and how much Edmonton struggled. So I do lean Edmonton here plus the points. Hard to trust them, but I trust them a lot more with Harris now returning at quarterback. Calgary Stampeders, Saskatchewan Roughriders. We have no line for this game. Calgary winning last week against Saskatchewan in that game. Very good win for Calgary, much needed win. And they continue to be an outstanding you talk about teams that are good off the bye week. Calgary has been just money in the bank when they have extra time to prepare. I mean, they were struggling going into the bye. They had lost 3 of their last 4 football games. They had the bye week, and sure enough, they came out of it, and they played a much better game, beating a good Saskatchewan team 23-17. But now it's the rematch between these two teams here in Saskatchewan. Can Calgary get it done on the road? Ends up being the question here in this game. We'll have to see where this number comes out. But we haven't seen consistency from Calgary. They are there's some contrasting statistics for them here in this game in terms of ATS numbers. They're 4-11 ATS their last 15 overall, 1-6-1 against the spread their last 8 after a win. But they are good in the underdog role, the road underdog role, and I'd expect them to be a road dog in this game. They're 21-8 against the spread their last 29 games as a road underdog. I think a lot of those teams were better Calgary teams, but for Saskatchewan, they're back home where they just have the one loss at home all year, which was against Winnipeg, 23-8. Other than that, they played some really good football here on their home field. Last week, we saw an under, and sometimes when you get these rematch situations and you get, an under one week, sometimes you get an over the next week. So I would probably lean in that direction here in terms of the total. Is Saskatchewan Calgary over a little bit? It was good to see Bo Mitchell have a better game last time out against Saskatchewan. And it looks like the bye week kind of fixed some things on the offensive side of the football for the Calgary Stampeders. So we'll have to see if they get some of their receivers back too as well this week, including Josh Huff, who's been one of their best receivers. He's questionable right now with an ankle injury for the Calgary Stampeders. When you look at it, still a lot of injuries too on defense for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and that concerns me. Of course, they've been without Freddie Bishop all year. They've been without Lacombo all year. They've got Mike Edom that's been dealing with a wrist injury. There's a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the football as well for Saskatchewan, and we kind of saw evidence of that last week in that loss against Calgary. So we're going to have to wait and see how this goes. Again, we don't have lines posted yet, but I loved Calgary last week, and I think I used that as my CFL best bet, if I'm not mistaken, on the Ian Cameron Football Frenzy show last week. But I don't know if I'd come back to them here. Saskatchewan's been good at home, and they're off a loss. They're trying to keep pace with Winnipeg in the West Division. So, and without a line being present, I'd lean Saskatchewan in that game. Let's turn our attention to Monday, where we've got the Ottawa Red Blacks and the Montreal Alouettes. Again, in this one, it looks like Montreal will be around an 8-point home favorite in this game, 48.5 the total. By the way, I do have a couple books reporting Calgary, Saskatchewan 4.5, 43.5 the total for that one. For Ottawa, Montreal, the first of the two Thanksgiving games, Montreal 8-point home favorites, 48.5 the total in this game. So I've cashed a ticket with the over involving Ottawa last night against Toronto. And of course, they've also went over the total last week with Caleb Evans at quarterback. And that's the thing with betting an over, I think, with Ottawa, with Caleb Evans at quarterback for this Red Blacks team. We saw against Edmonton when he's capable of having a good game, making plays. He's very athletic, very mobile, and can obviously and has sparked the offense to a certain degree here for Ottawa as of late, or in these last two games since he's taken over. But he's also still going to make mistakes and capable of creating points for the other team. And we saw that last night when Ottawa played the Toronto Argonauts, where 35-16 loss, but two pick sixes thrown by Caleb Evans in that game. And it was just a lot more difficult for him against those Chris Jones complex defensive schemes. You saw him struggle to read the defense. You saw him struggle to maintain composure, flustered a little bit in the pocket, forcing the football, not as accurate. Sometimes defenses that are aggressive will do that. And with Chris Jones now running that Toronto Argonaut defense, we definitely saw signs of that defense really causing problems for Caleb Evans. Now, can Montreal cause those same kind of problems? I still don't love what I'm seeing from Montreal's defense. Now, they came back from the dead to beat the Hamilton Ticats last week, 23-20. A lot of that was just mistakes by Hamilton. Two critical, costly turnovers when they had the football on offense that ended up being just daggers for them in that game and allowed Montreal to really get going and come back and win that game. But I'm still not sold on the Alouettes defense. In their last 6 games, they've given up at least 27 points in 5 of the last 6 games. And keep in mind, they held Hamilton to 20 points in that game, but they still gave up a couple big plays. And the offense, I think, with Masoli was a little bit out of sync because they just got him back for the first time this year. So I don't know what we're going to see from the Montreal defense against Ottawa. And keep in mind, Caleb Evans has shown some glimpses yet. He's had one great game. He's had one bad game. Which game are we going to see here is the question mark. We saw Montreal, of course, take apart and dismantle Ottawa last month, September the 3rd. They played 51-29. I was on Montreal in that game. They opened 3.5-point road favorites, and I think they closed close to -7. And now we see them here in this game laying, 8.5 is what it looks like, 8.5 with Montreal. So, there's been an adjustment. They're actually 0-2 against the spread at home this year, Montreal. So kind of worried about laying this many points. I mean, I don't think I can back Ottawa. I'm not going to be taking the points with the Red Blacks here. But you look at Montreal at home, 0-2 against the spread, lost against Hamilton, lost against BC. and I don't trust their defense enough. And it's not like their wins have been, other than beating Ottawa 51-29, they barely got by Hamilton. It's a team that's just 2-4 straight up in their last 6 games. Not easy, not an automatic to lay more than a touchdown with Montreal. I won't be on Ottawa. They're that bad. And it looked like more than anything that Edmonton win was an anomaly because they came right back last night and they get bombed by the Argos 35-16. So I would probably only look at laying the points, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm going to look at the over for sure in this game. Total is 48.5. Montreal, I think can score points in bunches against this Ottawa team. Keep in mind, Ottawa defensively, since the beginning of September, they allowed 51 points to this Montreal offense. It was probably the best game Vernon Adams has played, and he's had an uneven, inconsistent year. But one of his best games definitely was against Ottawa that day. And then they gave up 45 points at BC. They gave up 24 points to a third-string Hamilton quarterback, David Watford. 24 points to Taylor Cornelius, and a lot of yards as well. And then, of course, the 35 last night, although a lot of that was, special teams defensive scores. But it's not like Ottawa's defense shut down Toronto completely either. I would only look over the total with these two teams. I don't trust either defense. Vernon Adams, I think, can have a field day with that offense against Ottawa, much like he did last month. But Caleb Evans, again, capable of moving the football, scoring points, finishing drives. But after the mistakes we saw last night, he might also turn the football over a bit too much as well and lead to Montreal with short fields and increase their chances of scoring points in the game. So you get points either way, and that's why I kind of like the over in that game. All right, we wrap up with Toronto and Hamilton. Labor Day Classic on Monday, or not Labor Day Classic, Thanksgiving Monday game between these two teams. I think these two teams playing on a Monday. I always think Labor Day. It's Thanksgiving on Monday, and I will be there for this game. It looks like Hamilton, a 5.5-point home favorite, 43.5 being the total in this game. Hamilton has just been a lights-out under team throughout the year. I mean, they've got an offense that's had obviously all kinds of problems throughout the course of the season, with Masoli injured early in the year. Evans has missed the last few games now. They did get Masoli back, but boy, that offense is still a work in progress. You can tell. I mean, and they also got Braylon Addison back at receiver. Sometimes when you bring in two good players, even though they're two good players, two starters, sometimes it throws your offense out of sync. And I think we saw that with the Ticats against Montreal last week. I think they'll be in better rhythm, but still, we're seeing this team just completely and utterly trend to the under. 4 straight unders, 33, 40, 31, 43 points in these games. So not easy to bet this team under, but Toronto's going the other way. Toronto's gone over the total in 3 straight games against Saskatchewan, the home game against Montreal, and then last night against Ottawa. Those 3 games go over the total. The Toronto-Hamilton game on Labor Day went over the total, 32-19 victory for the Ticats. But the rematch in Toronto stayed well under, 17-16 victory for the Argos. This is a very big game in the standings. Toronto 5-3, first place in the East. We're 4-4. You haven't seen that in a very long time. Us trailing the Argos in the division. So this becomes a very, very important game here for both teams, especially for Hamilton off a disappointing home loss that snapped a 11-12 game home winning streak for the Hamilton Ticats in that game. Very disheartening. I mean, we couldn't have made any more noise on the football field or in the stands that game in Montreal or against Montreal when they had that 3rd and 20. I thought for sure there's no way they're converting this. Not only did they convert it, they got a touchdown. It was one of the Vernon Adams has been uneven. I mean, there's no question. He's had some good moments and he's had some awful moments. It's hard to get a good read on him, but what a time for him to step up and make that throw. It was really remarkable. You got to believe this is a bad scheduling spot for the Argos. They played a Wednesday night game against the Ottawa, and now they got to play against Hamilton, on a short week, 5 days later. And you could say the same about Ottawa against Montreal. So you would think these are advantageous spots for the home teams, Montreal and Hamilton, in these games on Monday. But Hamilton laying 5.5. We're going to have to wait and see. I hope their offense is in better sync because, their defense continues to play at a very high level. Outstanding defensively. The D-line's been great. The secondary has been magnificent. And they're hoping actually to have Chris Van Zyl, one of their best offensive linemen, back. for this game, Hamilton as well, which would be significant because that guy is an all-star caliber O lineman, and to have him back for Hamilton would be great. We talk about how in this recent series, Hamilton, especially here in Hamilton, the Ticats have owned the Argos. There's no question. The Argos are just 2-8 against the spread their last 10 meetings here in Hamilton. It hasn't been good. You look at the recent meetings here in Hamilton, 32-19 for Hamilton, 21-18 for Hamilton, 64-14 for Hamilton, 34-20 for Hamilton, 36-25 for Hamilton. It's just been one Hamilton victory after another against the Toronto Argonauts at Tim Hortons Field. And I don't know if that's going to change here. And I'm not saying that as a homer. I'm saying that because Hamilton's off a loss. They were not in a good mood after losing that game against Montreal in the fourth quarter. They're at home here. They don't want to drop 2 games in a row. Toronto's on a short week. I think it'll be McLeod Bethel-Thompson at quarterback. And look, he didn't do a whole lot against Ottawa last night. And Ottawa's got a sieve defense compared to Hamilton. Like the Toronto, most of their points were defensive scores and, special team scores. The block punt touchdown they had as well. It's not like McLeod Bethel-Thompson really went up and down the field against Ottawa. And that's what you get from him sometimes. He was outstanding against Montreal when they beat the Alouettes a couple weeks ago, but he was very mediocre at best last night. And now he's got to go on the road and face this very, very strong Hamilton defense. Hamilton's defense was good enough to win that game against Montreal, but offense turned the ball over, put them in a tough spot, and that's why Montreal ended up coming back and winning that game. So for me, I would lay the points with Hamilton. We'll see if it is indeed, because right now I'm seeing 5.5 right now with Hamilton as home favorites. If it's right around that number, as long as it's less than 7, I'd be interested in Hamilton from a side perspective. The total's tough because Hamilton's trending under, and their defense is great. I don't know if Toronto's offense is going to move the ball up and down against them, but Toronto's trending over, because they take some shots down the field. Their defense, they force turnovers, and their own defense sometimes can give up points and yards in bunches as well, like they did against Montreal a couple weeks ago. So you've got 2 contrasting totals teams. So it makes the total a little tricky, but I do lean Hamilton here as of right now for that Thanksgiving Monday game in CFL action. All right, it's time to switch gears. NFL time now for Week 5. Let's get to it. We will start with the Thursday night game tonight, the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. We got the Rams 2-point road favorites, 2.5 in some spots. The total in this game, 54. I've mentioned this a few times already on a couple of shows this week. We talked about this game on the Hitting the Books football show earlier this week. I like the Rams. I like the spot. I like the way this sets up for them. They finally got, a dose of reality, a wake-up call, losing to the Arizona Cardinals, which I think there's no shame in that with the way Arizona's played this year. Kyler Murray and that offense outstanding and a much improved defense. I think this is the Rams' opportunity to bounce back. They're 6-2 in their last 8 head-to-head meetings against Seattle. They've had the better of it. Sean McVay's gotten the better of Pete Carroll more often than not. I don't trust this Seattle defense. Good job. They shut down Jimmy G, who got injured, and then Trey Lance, who looked lost, last week again for the 49ers against the Seahawks defense. But, when I look at it here tonight, the Rams, to me, are the side. They're the better team, better defense still. I know they've had their own defensive issues, but I still think and I've got the Rams power rated 2.5 points higher than Seattle, which means they probably should be laying 3 in this game, not less than that. So the point spread makes sense. The value's there. The line value's there. The spot is there. It's a better team, in my opinion. Seattle. What were Seattle's wins? Indianapolis stinks. That was one of their wins. They'll blow a game against Tennessee at home. That's not impressive to me. And then they get bombed by Minnesota. I mean, this Seattle team has just not looked all that impressive. It's got to be said. I mean, the only wins were San Francisco, an injury-riddled team, and Trey Lance looking lost at the quarterback spot when he had to come into this game, and Indy, who've had issues all year. That's the wins for Seattle. Where's the impressive victory, for the Seattle Seahawks coming into this game? I don't see it. I like the Rams here. I wouldn't lay more than 3, because I think this is going to be competitive. Like, the Rams aren't going to go into Seattle, tough place to play, and blow them out. It's going to be a competitive, hard-fought contest. I have no doubt, but I just got to go with the Rams. They're in a price range where a win should get you a point spread cover. So I like the Rams. I lean over the total at 54. It's very high, but the Rams have gone over in every game, and I will not buck that trend. All right, let's go to Sunday NFL action. We've got New York Jets, Atlanta Falcons. Note the start time. This is in London, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. So be aware of where this game is being played. Be aware of the start time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern kickoff. Atlanta 3-point favorites, 46 the total in this game. The money's come in on the Jets, and I kind of agree. I can't lay points with this Atlanta team. No way. So the Atlanta team, Falcons last week, here's what they did. They outgained Washington. Their offense went up and down the field. They had a clean game, for the most part. They didn't commit as many penalties, and somehow they lost the game, and they also didn't cover against Washington at home. That's trouble. That's bad news. That is absolutely awful for Atlanta. They had all of that going for them. And not only did they lose the game, they don't even cover the number in that game. This Atlanta team stinks. I'm sorry. It's terrible. This team is absolutely awful defensively. Uh, there's no denying that in my mind. They can't get stops. Whenever, like, Washington was just trying to kick the field goal, win the game last week. And then there's J.D. McKissick because of defensive coverage breakdowns, just romping into the open field and going into the end zone for a touchdown. I mean, this Atlanta defense is atrocious. They have been for a couple of years now. They still are. They can't get stops against anybody. Let's not forget Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, they haven't really put it together on offense, but they sure did when they played the Falcons in week 1. I mean, it's just a terrible team. I don't think it's very well coached by Arthur Smith. You could say what you want about how good he was as an OC with Tennessee, and I think he was, but some guys just aren't cut out to be head coaches. And I've been less than impressed with what I've seen from Arthur Smith. There's been bad adjustments. They've had bad second halves. What else is new? This is just something that keeps on happening for Atlanta. Bad second half performances. And for the New York Jets, winning against Tennessee, that certainly, I think, could light a spark for them. And if you look at Zach Wilson and the Jets offense, they were really up against it in terms of who they had to play early in the year. They had to play a very good Carolina team and a good defense in the first game. They had to play, they've had to play some really, really tough defenses. They had to play New England, which has a very good defense in my mind this year. This has been a tough schedule of defenses to navigate early in the year for Zach Wilson. Carolina, New England, Denver after that. And then they finally got to play a defense that is not that great last week when they faced the Tennessee Titans. And they won that game 27-24. And it's not a coincidence that Zach Wilson had his best game as a starting quarterback in this league. A 21-34, 297 yards. The pass yards per attempt went way up. You could tell there were more big plays. There was more explosiveness in that New York Jets offense last week. And it's because you played a much weaker defense. Anybody's going to have a chance to be better when they're playing the Titans after playing the Broncos defense, after playing the Patriots defense, after playing the Panthers defense. And that's exactly what happened. And the way I've handicapped this is Atlanta's defense any better than Tennessee's? Absolutely not. And in fact, it's worse. So the Jets should score. I like the Jets here. Again, it's gone down to 3. I really liked it at 3.5, 4. I still like them enough to take them at 3. If it gets lower than that, I'd back off. But I like the over as well. The one thing Atlanta will do is score points. They do still move the ball. Matt Ryan did last week against that Washington defense. The Jets defense, it's still a work in progress, to be honest with you. I know Robert Saleh is a defensive mind, but, they gave up 25 points to Mac Jones and the Patriots, 26 points to the Broncos, not exactly light them up offenses. And then, of course, Tennessee got 24 points last week. And, if not for so many sacks taken by Tannehill and bad red zone execution and efficiency, they probably score more than 24 in that game, Tennessee. So I like the dog. I like the over as well. Jets, Falcons in London on Sunday morning. Miami, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay 10-point home favorites, 48 the total in this game. I lean dog. I lean under in this game. The total's already come down from 49.5 to 48. This Tampa Bay defense, their secondary is riddled right now with injuries, and the spot couldn't be worse for the Bucs. It could not be worse. You're coming off the game of the Tom Brady's huge not redemption game, but go back to New England, beat his former team, beat Hoodie, beat Belichick. Everybody was, giddy for that game. And then you played the Rams the week before that. So you've played 2 hellacious games in a row. Ballyhooed games, national TV games, playing the Rams, which was a spotlight game. Patriots and the Tom Brady revenge game against his old team on Sunday Night Football in the rain. They gutted out and win 19-17, but they didn't cover as 6-point road favorites. Worth noting that in that game. And now you're going back to home to play this Miami team that might not excite you. And again, there's still plenty of injuries to deal with, especially in the secondary. This is getting really rough in terms of the injuries they're dealing with in the secondary right now. Jamel Dean, cornerback, banged up. Carlton Davis, quadricep injury, suffered last Sunday night against the Patriots, questionable. Sean Murphy Bunting is out for the season for Tampa Bay in that secondary. So, I mean, this Tampa Bay secondary and pass defense is riddled. Now, the only concern is Jacoby Brissett competent enough? Is this Dolphins offense any sort of good enough to take advantage of these injuries in the defensive backfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I don't know that because this has been a bad offense now. Well, I shouldn't say the Las Vegas game, but last week was rough for Miami. There's no way to sugarcoat that. Jacoby Brissett, less than 200 yards passing. He didn't have any interceptions. That's the good news. But, man, that was an offense that really didn't get much going until, the Colts got up by double digits, and maybe they kind of took their foot off the gas when they got up 20-3. Only then was with those 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns did Miami find the end zone. But I would still look at Miami plus 10 before I even consider Tampa Bay laying double digits in this spot with that ravaged defense and coming off 2 huge games. It's not a Tampa spot. I don't trust them as double-digit home chalk. Let's keep in mind they were almost double-digit home chalk against Dallas. They won by 2. Actually, look at all the results so far for Tampa. They're 1-3 against the spread. They beat Dallas by 2, 10-point favorites. The Atlanta point spread was a little bit fraudulent because there was a couple of turnovers late in that game by Atlanta that allowed Tampa Bay to extend the margin. And then, of course, against the Rams, they lose outright as slight road favorites. And then road favorites against New England, they only win by 2. This team is not winning by margin right now. And the only time they did was against Atlanta when Matt Ryan was turning the ball over left and right in the fourth quarter. That's it. So I do not trust Tampa Bay laying 10. I would look Miami, and I think it'll be a little bit lower scoring as well. So Dolphins plus 10 for me, just a spot play. Look, nobody's going to want Miami this week after losing at home to the Colts and looking so bad in that game against what was a previously winless Colts team. I understand that. There's no betting bandwagon on Miami, but sometimes those are the right spots. Sometimes those are the right prices and the right situations to back a team. And that's why I lean Miami here, plus 10, and I lean under the total, which will make Noli Knows, who I see is in our chat, very happy. Nice to see you there, everybody. And thanks to everybody in the chat for tuning in. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Birdie, Alex Ramirez, Hoops590, Jansen, Andrew McGinnis in the chat. Welcome in. Crumb, pocket quarterback, Lamar Jack. Yeah, I don't give 2 shits about the jersey stat that they're 4-0 wearing those, special green jerseys. I mean, that's nice. I get it, but I'll never make a betting decision based on something so frivolous as that. I mean, for me, it's matchups, it's point spread value, it's spot, it's injuries, it's all those situations. It's not what jersey they wear, it's just not. I think that's more happenstance. That's more coincidence than anything that Seattle's, 4-0 with those jerseys on. But we'll see. Hey, it's something to back. If you like Seattle, it's something to back your opinion with, I guess. Philadelphia, Carolina 3-point home favorites, 45 the total. Lots of money coming in on Philly. I don't agree. I think people just saw them get their defense get ripped apart by Dallas last week and figure, Carolina's been exposed. Carolina's now a fraud. Carolina's just going to fall off now. I'm not buying that. I ain't buying that. Sam Darnold in the offense was fine. Sam Darnold's actually leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns from a quarterback so far this year. I mean, his aggressiveness and his willingness to run with the football is just staggering. And it's really helping out this Carolina team because their offensive line is still a work in progress. The fact that they haven't had to deal with Sam Darnold having to just drop back every single time, that's definitely helped this Carolina offensive line. Philadelphia, to me, I mean, 3 losses in a row. San Francisco, Dallas, Kansas City. They've lost all those games by 6 points or more. The offense is moving the ball at times, but they just can't get away from turnovers, whether it's fumbles, whether it's Jalen Hurts interceptions. They've not been trustworthy on the road. They're 1-7 against the spread their last 8 road games, 1-5 against the spread their last 6 as a road underdog as well. This uh, Philadelphia team, which isn't good. I don't like their defense at all. And Nick Sirianni, he's going to get heavily and already has been heavily criticized for how this Philadelphia defense is playing. It's been awful, especially the last 2 weeks. Now, granted, Dallas, Kansas City, two extremely potent offenses, but look, Carolina's got a solid offense. I don't want to say they're potent, they're elite, but they've put the points up on the board, especially of late, what we've seen from them. 26, 24, 28 in their last three games. And I'll trust their defense to make the stops in this game. I can't trust Philadelphia to do the same. So, especially now with this number -3, I like Carolina here. I think bounce back situation, better coach as well. I'll take Matt Rule and his staff in a heartbeat over this young rookie, Nick Sirianni, who hasn't done anything to impress me yet. Give me Carolina here, -3 in this one. New Orleans, Washington. New Orleans, 2-point road favorites, 43.5 the total in this game. Money coming in on New Orleans, and yeah, it's definitely the kind of spot you would maybe consider New Orleans in. They have been good on the. Remember, they went to New England and they won on the road a couple weeks ago. Came home and kind of fell flat. But give the Giants a lot of credit. They played well. A couple defensive breakdowns for the Saints, and really the problem for the Saints offensively is where's the explosiveness in their offense? It's all check down city. They're not letting Jameis Winston throw the ball deep, and it's kind of puzzling to me. That's one of the strengths of Jameis Winston, his arm. He does have a strong arm. You can laugh all you want about the turnovers and the problems he's had with decision making in the past, but one thing you cannot deny is that he's got a good arm, and they're not kind of letting him use that big arm. They had that one big pass play from Winston. I think it was to Callaway very early in the third quarter last week against the Giants. That's really all we saw in terms of letting Jameis Winston, throw the ball deep. I mean, a lot of this is short to intermediate passing right now for the New Orleans Saints and running the football. And we're finding out, too, you contain Alvin Kamara, you got a good chance to hold this Saints offense in check. We're finding that out more and more as we see. I mean, I think they've got to push the ball down the field a little bit more for Winston. That is one of his strengths, and we haven't seen that quite as much from this New Orleans offense. The Washington defense is still very, very bad. And I got away with one last week. One of my top plays in the NFL was Washington money line against Atlanta. I got away with one. Like their defense did everything they could to lose that game against Atlanta. They did not stop the Falcons. They did not stop Matt Ryan. But thankfully, Atlanta shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. Their own defense, Atlanta, was terrible, just as bad, if not worse. And Taylor Heineke, the one thing we see from this kid is he's a warrior. He battles. He competes. He is a guy that just does not let things get to him. He could throw an interception. His team could be trailing in the game, and yet he has got some moxie to him. He has found the way to rally his team. Against the Giants, he did it. Against Atlanta last week, he did it. They ran up against that juggernaut Bills team. I think I kind of excuse him for that game playing out the way it did. We'll see, but that defense is tough to trust. And now they got to, try to fend off this Saints team. That ends up being the question. When you look at the defensive numbers as well for this Washington defense, 118.5 yards per rush, 4 yards per carry. They haven't been bad with their run defense. It's their secondary that's been bad. But the Saints' passing offense hasn't been great. So it's actually not a bad matchup for the Washington football team defense because the strength is up front. The strength has been against the run, not against the pass. And then on the other side of the fence, you've got the Washington offense, which, has actually done a better job throwing the football, especially last week against Atlanta. And the Saints secondary, Saints have been good against the run. Saints have been very good against the run, but against the pass, they've not been as good. So, it kind of leads me to believe Washington's got some edges offensively a little bit. And even though their defense has been bad, they've been better against the run, and the Saints have not been throwing the ball as much as I'd like. It makes me lean. If it hits 3, I might grab Washington if it hits 3. If it doesn't, I'd probably pass because I do understand it's a bounce back spot for the Saints here going on the road against Washington. It's a lukewarm. I lean under as well. I know that Washington's been an over machine lately, but just based on the way these two teams match up, are actually both of them very slow paced offensively. Even though Washington's defense has been bad, they've been going over slow paced offense. So I think the under could get there in this game. Tennessee, Jacksonville. Tennessee 4.5 point road favorites, 48.5 the total. There's still all kinds of injuries with Tennessee. And I thought, Jacksonville with the extra time to prepare, maybe this is a chance for them to rise up and compete. Maybe, and they did last week against Cincinnati. That was a valiant effort from Jacksonville. 24-21. They came out strong. Obviously, they couldn't hold the lead, but I saw definite signs of improvement from Jacksonville, but the problem is now they got this Urban Meyer mess going on and all his issues off the field, and the players are sort of, I think, laughing at him behind the scenes and kind of losing, respect. And he's had to address the team publicly about his transgressions. And how is that going to play? I mean, this week against Tennessee, it's a really tough game because initially I was trying to look at Jacksonville, but they have some injuries too. Let's not forget DJ Chark is on IR now. That really hurts in the passing game for Jacksonville. But again, the Titans, you talk about last week, it's amazing how no A.J. Brown and no Julio Jones, and the receiving core without those two guys just wasn't the same. Bud Dupree's one of their bigger acquisitions on defense in the offseason, has missed the last 2 games with a knee injury and may miss again this week. You've got, injuries mounting, like I said, for this football team. And that worries me. Jayon Brown at linebacker, questionable going into this game. A lot of injuries mounting here for this Tennessee team. The good news is it looks like A.J. Brown with that hamstring strain is going to be back this Sunday for the Titans, which is going to help here. But this is a really tough game. Look, Tennessee's a terrible road favorite. I've said that before. I know I've said that before. They are a bad road favorite, and they showed it last week against the Jets. I don't trust them laying 4.5 on the road. I lean Jacksonville, but I don't know where this team is at right now with the Meyer stuff going on. Total down to 48.5. Not much of an opinion on I just lean Jacksonville a little bit. I would actually take the Jags before I take the Titans here in this one. Detroit, Minnesota. Minnesota 9-point home favorites, 49 the total in this game. I'm not going to be involved in this game. I'm not laying 9.5 with Minnesota. But Detroit was a comedy of errors last week against Chicago. To be honest with you, that game has the chance. They have a chance to be right in that game and have a chance to win it, believe it or not, if they don't implode time and time again in the red zone. I mean, the red zone offense was a joke for the Detroit Lions last week. They just completely and utterly shot themselves in the foot every single time they got inside the 20-yard line. They end up, losing by 10. The effort's been there for Detroit, believe it or not, for Campbell. They play hard for the guy. You can't fault them for that, but they're just not very good. They're terrible on defense. They let Justin Fields have his best game since being with the Bears at the beginning of the year. I don't trust them here. And Minnesota coming off a home loss to Cleveland. It's now going to be their 3rd home game in a row before they go on the road to face Carolina in a couple of weeks, I believe, by the way, as well. No, they don't have a bye. That's next week. Then they have their bye, Minnesota. So I would expect Minnesota to not take Detroit lightly coming off the loss that we saw against them last against Cleveland last week. And last year they played Detroit November 8th, 34-20 win in Minnesota for the Vikings. So it's definitely a Viking spot, but they're not one of those teams right now that I'm looking to lay this kind of number with. So for me, it's a pass on this game, Lions and Vikings. Vikings defense played really well. Give them credit. That was the best defensive game they played all year against a very good Cleveland offense. So it makes me wonder, how's Jared Goff and that offense going to move the ball here against the Minnesota defense if they play anything like they did against Cleveland last week. Denver, Pittsburgh. We've got Pittsburgh pick'em, 40 the total. I'd still back Denver before I back Pittsburgh, even with Drew Lock at quarterback. And problem is, I don't know if I'm going to, because we saw nothing, all right? Absolutely nothing from Locke when he took over for Teddy Bridgewater last week when he got injured for the Broncos. I mean, he struggled. They lose 23-7. The offense didn't do much at all. It's definitely a concern going into this weekend. Bridgewater hasn't been completely ruled out from the last I checked due to that concussion, but I don't think he's going to play because I've seen concussions play out so many times. And a lot of times, you're looking at a situation where you need more than a week, to be able to heal up and return from it. So keep that in mind going into this game. But the one thing that bothers me too for Denver, the injuries. I mean, lots of key injuries here for them with Melvin Gordon, Ronald Darby in the secondary, couple of offensive linemen, Bridgewater, as I mentioned, Patrick Surtain II, who's been very good for them, questionable with a chest injury. Bradley Chubb, KJ Hamler, Josie Jewell, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, just tons of injuries mounting for the Broncos. That's the one thing that worries me here. But Pittsburgh against this defense doing anything, I don't see it happening. This has an under written all over it to me. Lock against, on the road. Pittsburgh's defense is still serviceable, but Pittsburgh, I don't think is going to do a whole lot against Denver's defense. Total is 40, a very low 40 for a reason. Under or pass for me. And even with Lock potentially at quarterback for this game, I would lean Broncos. All right, we'll pick up the pace. We got to wrap this up in a few minutes. Green Bay, Cincinnati. Green Bay 3-point road favorites, 51 the total. I like the Bengals side here. This is definitely a flat spot for the Packers. Cincinnati continues to impress. They've had a little extra time playing Thursday night last week against Jacksonville. I like the over as well, and that's also gone up from 48 to 50 and a half, 51. I'll leave it at that. Cincinnati and over. Home underdog. Green Bay still, in this spot, this is sometimes where we see Green Bay have that, I don't want to say a New Orleans type of performance here, but definitely I think Cincinnati, there's reason for people to be liking Cincinnati here. This is a much improved football team. Defense, Joe Burrow's playing great at running the offense for this team. There's a lot to like from this group, without a doubt. And I think they've got a chance to maybe surprise Green Bay a little bit on Sunday. And you have to factor in, too, there's some injuries mounting a little bit for the Packers as well. So for me, Bengals, for me, over the total in that game. New England, Houston, New England -9, road favorites, 39.5 the total. I like the Patriots in the first half here. I don't know if I want to lay the 9, but -4, -4.5 in the first half with the Patriots. Sign me up. I think they'll, after the Tampa Bay game, bounce back situation. Davis Mills against any kind of competent defense. We've seen what he's all about, and that's not much for the Texans. And the total, I agree with the under here. Even though it's low, it's 39.5. I could easily see this being 20-16 or 20-10, 17-7. Really, I could see that kind of game. 20-7, 23-7, 23-10. Take your pick, something like that. I think New England could get just into the low 20s, and Houston is just not, to me, going to do much offensively against New England here in this game. But keep in mind, Houston's defense for a whole first half against Buffalo last week, even though it'll read 40-0 final score, they bottled up Josh Allen and that offense pretty well last week for a half. I mean, that Houston defense is competing. They're not terrible. And they might be able to hang in there against New England's offense a little bit. So that's why I think the under makes some sense in that game. Chicago, Las Vegas, 5.5-point home favorites, 44 the total. I don't trust Justin Fields just yet. I know he was better against Detroit, but that's the Lions. Now you got Las Vegas back home, that first loss of the year. John Gruden wasn't happy with their execution or their performance, especially in the first half where they got down by 21. I don't think they'd overlook Chicago. I still think Las Vegas's defense has played pretty. Their pass rush has been there, and that's trouble because I don't think the Chicago offensive line is a polished, finished product by any stretch of the imagination here for the Bears. So I think from a spot perspective, that home field has meant something to Las Vegas. They're already 2-0 in that stadium with the fans back there making a lot of noise, and they're a loud group there. The Raider home fans for their team in Las Vegas. They beat Baltimore, they beat Miami in their two previous home games. So, and again, now they barely won those games, both in overtime. So maybe you get a little concerned now. You got to lay 5.5. I mean, overtime is probably going to not get you a point spread cover in this game, but I would lean to the Raiders here at -5.5. Don't know if I love it or the number, but I don't want Chicago. It would be Raiders or pass. Cleveland Browns, LA Chargers. Chargers 1.5, 2-point home favorites, 47 the total in this game. I lean over the total as well. I think Cleveland can run the ball on the Chargers. Chargers run defense is the one area of their defense that concerns me a little bit right now. And Cleveland's defense has really picked it up the last couple of weeks against the Bears and the Vikings. Played lights out. Myles Garrett is blowing up the line of scrimmage. Denzel Ward and that secondary locking things down pretty well down the field as well. And they're going to because they're going to need to be that good again, especially the secondary, because Justin Herbert has found Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, a lot of weapons. They use Austin Eckler as a pass-catching running back. So it's going to be a challenge for this Cleveland defense, but they've played well as an underdog, catching points. I would lean a little bit to the Cleveland side here in this game. Also at 47, lean over. Giants, Dallas, 7-point home favorites, 52 the total. I already bet the over 49.5 early in the week. I said this this total's going to go up. It has. Not a surprise. And look, the Giants offense finally got on track. Daniel Jones making plays in the passing game. Saquon Barkley had his best game all year. That's good news for the Giants. And I think their offense can have some success here against Dallas's defense, which, look, is definitely improved from last year, no doubt. But they'll still give up yards. They'll still give up points. I think they'll give up some to the Giants here. Giants are on an incredible point spread run as road underdogs. You will not see me going against the Giants getting this number on the road. You will not. But I went against Dallas last week, and I paid the price for it with Carolina losing that game. I don't know if I'm in a rush to bet against Dallas again, but at this number, I would lean Giants. But I like the over even more, 52. Dallas will move the ball. Dallas is moving the ball against everybody. This Dallas offense looks like the real deal. Balanced attack. Dak to his receivers. Wilson, Lamb, Cooper might be back this week. We'll see. The tight ends, Jarwin and Schultz have been outstanding. They're running the ball with that balanced running back tandem. Pollard and Zeke looks like a reinvigorated, revitalized back this year. So I think we'll see points both ways. I like the over. Lean Giants getting a touchdown. San Francisco, Arizona. Arizona 5-point home favorites, 49.5 the total. There's no doubt the value of San Francisco. This is not an Arizona spot. They're off the big win against the Rams, 4-0. Maybe, feeling themselves a little bit, reading their press clippings a little bit. San Francisco may have Trey Lance at quarterback. We'll have to wait and see. Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been completely ruled out of this game yet, but I don't know. Trey Lance was rough, and now he's got to go on the road, and Arizona's defense has improved. It's definitely not a value spot for Arizona. It is not. It is flat out not a value spot for Arizona. And I understand people liking the value with the Niners because there is value. Before the season, this was around pick'em, less than a field goal with Arizona at home. And now they're -5. There's no doubt there's some inflation here with Arizona rolling, with San Francisco injury riddled on defense, quarterback issues. That's why you're seeing an inflated number. The value's with San Fran, but I don't know if I'll back them because I'm high on Arizona. And, I had this number -4, and I'm high on Arizona. Everybody knows that. I'm on their win total over. I took them to win the NFC West and dark horse to win the NFC and Super Bowl before the year. Not many people were more pro Arizona than me coming into the year. But even I only had this number -4, and they're -5 right now. So that tells you all you need to know. Nobody's more pro Arizona than me, and even I didn't have this line where it is. So that's why, to me, the value is probably on San Francisco. But I don't know if I'll get involved in this game one way or the other. Buffalo, Kansas City, Sunday Night Football. Kansas City, 2.5, 3-point home favorites, 56.5 the total. I'm on the Bills here at +3. Kansas City's defense, you might think, oh, they won the game. Good job. No good job. They didn't force a punt. They did not force a single punt against Philadelphia last week. They're lucky Philadelphia turned the ball over in that game a bunch of times. This is a bad defense for Kansas City. Definitely, to me, the Bills have the better of these two defenses. Now, the problem is now and the Chiefs, by the way, not only bad point spread run going back to last year, but they're 0-2 ATS at Arrowhead this year. All this talk, the Arrowhead mystique, playing at Arrowhead's a tough place to play. Well, they're 0-2 ATS at home this year, Kansas City. But now they're only laying 2.5. They're only laying 3. I understand that. It's definitely a discount now on the Chiefs. But I'm telling you right now, this Chiefs defense, I'm not laying points with them. In Buffalo, the playoff revenge game, losing in the AFC Championship. I think they want this one badly. Not that Kansas City doesn't, but take points with the better defense and an offense that can match Patrick Mahomes score for score if need be. Yeah, give me Buffalo here as the road dog. Should be a beauty of a game, though, on Sunday Night Football. And last but not least, Indianapolis, Baltimore. Baltimore 7-point home favorites, 46 the total. I'm not buying the Colts after that one game against Miami. They need to be able to run the football to have success. They were able to against Miami. I don't know if they're going to be able to against this Baltimore defense on the road. No. I don't know if I'd lay 7 with Baltimore. I think what I would do is put Baltimore in a money line parlay, put them in a 6-point teaser, get them down to -1 on a 6-point teaser because I do think they'll win that game next Monday night. But yeah, I'm not trusting the Colts on the road just because they finally got that first win against a Miami team that's got injuries, that's got a backup quarterback. I'm going to need to see more from Indy. So Baltimore, I'd lean with them laying the 7, but more than anything, put them in a teaser, put them in a parlay because that's what I'll be doing with the Baltimore Ravens. All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We had to cut this show short. I've got another show to do in a few minutes. We appreciate it. I will be back at 4 p.m. Eastern later today with the MLB Closing Time Show. Me, Ski Profit, Connor Mack, and Sharpie, and we'll break down the Division Series games for tonight, as well as the White Sox-Astros game 2 for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. So we'll break down all of that right here on Pub Sports Radio, MLB Closing Time Show later today. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button on your way out. I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoyed the football weekend. Good luck with all your wagers. And we'll see you again next Thursday, once again, for Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy right here on Pub Sports Radio.